Hey guys, it's Ollie from Rad Season. I'm stoked to be joined today by ski industry veteran, action sports host of the Powell Movement, Mike Powell. Mike, thanks for coming on the show, dude.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
And whereabouts are you at the moment, dude?
I am in a bathroom in the Washington, D.C. area at my Mimi Dell's. Unfortunately, she just passed away. But we are sitting
Sorry.
Shiva at her house, and she has a mirrored bathroom that every surface is covered in mirrors. And I figured the Powell Movement podcast and bathrooms go hand in hand based on I hope you get that the Powell Movement is a poop joke. And I'm in a toilet to do the podcast. I have a beer here. I hope you have a beer. Should we cheers?
I do. Cheers.
All right. Cheers, man.
But yeah, I'm definitely loving the whole the decor of all the mirrors. It looks like you're in a nightclub.
She was the classiest person ever and had some really unique things going on. It was all about style for her, and that's really with all these sports, everything's about style. I think I learned that from my grandmother.
Good stuff. And you grew up in DC, right?
Grew up in the DC area. Went to Langley High School, then Radford University, and we skied a bunch growing up. Made a couple Colorado trips, did a lot of time in Beaver Creek and Vail as a youth, and then went to college. And in college, there really wasn't much skiing as there wasn't much money in my pocket in college, so I didn't get to go that often. But right when I got out, I started working at a ski shop and realized, why would I work at a ski shop when I could just move to Colorado and ride every day? And I had started snowboarding by this point. So in about, I would say 1997, I moved out to Colorado and I did 3 years in Vail. Worked at Buzz's Boards, Christie Sports, Vendettas, and would get my 100 days a year, and that was the best time I had in the snow sports world.
And how? So was it those were those points when you when you got into the retail business? Was that the start of it all, or?
That was just, I was finished school and I needed something to do, and while I figured out what I was going to do with my life, but I wasn't going to get a real job right away. And I knew that I love snowboarding, and at that point, that's what I was all about. And I figured that was going to be the plan. I was going to move out west and I was going to snowboard. And I did that for a few years. And yeah, that's, I'd always had fun being on the mountain. That was kind of where any problem in life is forgotten and you can just have fun. And so that was always a happy place for me. And I realized I don't want to do something that just sucks for the rest of my life. And while every job has its portion of sucking to it, working in the world of snow was a lot better than everywhere else.
And did you know that, like, back then, when you were, was that something that you thought, okay, this is what I want to do when you were growing up as a kid, or like when you got into college?
When I was growing up as a kid, I think I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I have an uncle who does the Wizards. He was the voice of the Wizards for 20 years here in Washington, D.C. And he's like a local celebrity here. And just seeing what he did throughout his life, I really wanted to do that, but I didn't study it in college. And I wish I would have done that now, but I didn't. And, I had no real plan after school. So the ski shop invited me in for a job, and 30 years later, I'm still in the business.
And what happened then? So like going from the ski shop, and because you had a pretty long career through like multiple roles at K2, but like what was the transition between the shop and like going from there?
Well, I blew my knee out towards the end of the season, I think in '99. And I came back to DC and I had to have my knee reconstructed and all of that. And I ended up with a terrible infection and surgeries. I was in the hospital for like 2 weeks, and it was like 6 months of not really walking. So I was miserable. I had a PICC line to my heart. It just absolutely sucked. But while that was going on, I found a job on the internet that K2 was hiring something called an ambassador. And the way it looked like it was a rep job. You get a van and you go shop to shop, mountain to mountain. It looked like a. So I was able to apply for that, and they got in touch with me, and I had the interview and I thought everything went well, but they had a hiring freeze at K2, and they were like, hey man, we would love to bring you on, but we're not going to be able to do it for about 8 months to a year. So that's actually when I had the knee surgery. It was right when they told me they couldn't hire me because I was going to work for K2 with a blown knee, get insurance, then get my knee fixed with the K2 insurance. But I had insurance anyway, so I did it myself while I was going to wait for K2. And while I was doing that, I realized I needed to keep in touch with those hiring managers, or I was going to be forgotten because they had a freeze for a while. So I had a friend who used to send me the filthiest porno ever. Just every week I would get an email with just disgusting stuff that I didn't even want to send to people because it was so bad. So I figured I'd send it to these K2 guys, the hiring managers. And every week I sent them these porno emails and they loved them. They thought they were so great. And I believe that's why I got hired eventually, was because for those 6 to 8 months that I was recovering from my knee, I was sending them just terrible, explicit material that would get most people fired, but not a K2 back then.
And did you think like that? Okay, like this is definitely a good. It will be an interesting job, and it will be a good fit if these guys kind of, are finding that funny, right?
Yeah, the dream for me is I thought I was going to get this huge van. I didn't think I was going to have too much stuff to put in it. So at night I would think about how I was going to pimp out the inside of my van, how I was going to have a bed that folded down. I might have a TV in there. And that's really what I thought I was going to do as a rep. But then I realized that there is so much gear that you're traveling around with. That's not the job. You actually stay in hotels or with friends, and the van is totally full. But what I thought the job was going to be was just high-fiving people, driving place to place in a van. And actually, my first job was kind of that.
And wasn't that so? You were the East Coast ambassador, right?
Yeah, I worked from DC to New York City, and I did everything inline skate and ski. So it was funny that I came from being a snowboarder and I was put right into a world of inline skate and skiing. And I had no problems with it whatsoever. And being that, I found out the next year that when I got back on a snowboard, the way that my ACL is right now, when I get on a heel side edge, I have that kind of a lot of looseness, like 2 inches almost. So I can't even ride a snowboard unless I'm riding switch, it seems like. So I had to end up turning to skiing because I couldn't snowboard anymore. It just wasn't fun.
No, and like when you so with the transition then going into inline with inline skating as well at K2. I mean, that was when I like inline was a big deal back then, right? So I mean,
inline kept skiing and snowboarding in business for a few years. I feel like from '96 to 2000, when shit wasn't doing really well, especially for the ski world. Inline skating was the thing that was the cash cow for K2. I mean, people can say whatever they want about the sport, and I'm sure a lot of people in those walls have opinions of what's cool and what's not cool. But I really just cared about people having fun, and we were having fun and selling a shit ton of inline skates. I mean, you remember those times from '98 to 2000. I mean, given I was in at 2000 a little bit later, and it was still doing well. But there were so many people inline skating. It was like the biggest thing in the world until it was the smallest thing in the world.
Yeah. And I mean, why do you reckon, like what contributed to its rise and then inevitably,
I look at hockey. I got into it through hockey, and I had played in many leagues and just loved. But I never really thought about the skating part. It was just a function of playing hockey. And then when I got a job with K2 was when I started skating ramps and going to Woodward and seeing a lot of different stuff that really I wasn't that educated on when I got hired, but I lied and I got in, so whatever. But then I was, with everything I do, I kind of go in 110%. So I was fully into, that whole scene and getting, skating. And but I think hockey was the big thing that got everybody into it. ESPN used to run hockey leagues where you could just see it on TV all the time. That gave kids some kind of aspirational, thing where it was like, hey, I can play hockey and maybe there's a future in me playing roller hockey. I don't have to play ice. And then on the aggressive side, you have the X Games and all these different things that gave people a feeder system to think that they could actually move up in the sport. And that is all gone now. And that's why it's not, it's as underground as it gets.
And were you skating as well when you were working there, when you were involved in it? Did you sort of get excited about it and kind of bring back that times where you used to?
Yeah, I suck though. I mean, I did win the under 40 contest at my local skate park, and there were some skaters who had been skating for like 20 years there, so I felt good about that. But I have a trophy that I proudly display still. But yeah, I skated. I mean, I still think it's fun. I mean, my kid is skateboarding now. And I broke out the skates not too long ago and went and just hit a ledge with him. And given he wasn't hitting a ledge because he's like 11 and just figuring it out. But yeah, I have a lot of fun doing it.
That's cool. And then so what happened after that? Then you went into team management. Is that right? Like after you were repping and.
Yeah, so I was doing the inline skate thing, and my friends were all the ski guys. So Mike Goot, Ryan Schmees. Ryan Schmees is a really famous ski designer who's an incredible artist, super talented. And we happened to live together. He moved out to Seattle, and we moved into a place together in about 2002. And when we did, every skier that came through Seattle, whether they were on K2 or not, stayed at my house. And when they stayed at my house, they watched rollerblading videos. And when they watched those videos, it was me just telling them, like, I can't believe you're not watching these videos just to even find the rails. It's like every rail's been found, and you can just watch these videos and see them all and then see where you want to go. And I don't know if that rubbed off on them or not, but I established a relationship with, it seemed like 50 to 100 skiers would just come stay at my house. And it was always a cloud of smoke and beer. And yeah, it was just more of a friendship level. So I think I met a lot of the ski team and snowboard team for that matter, just through coming through town. My PC battery is very low. Oh, fuck.
And we're back.
I'm back, and I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there, but we
That's
got
okay,
cut
man.
off here, and we are back in a different format. Sorry, Ollie.
That's okay, man. All good. I was just grinning at the screen on my own, trying to, like, I don't know if I should start singing or something or what.
I know, I was running out. I was like, I can't believe this. I'm the worst podcast guest ever. If someone did that to me in a live interview, I would probably smile like you are and figure out how to fill the time. But I apologize for that. And
No worries,
I
man.
didn't even spell my name right on the screen guard, and that's fine with me. So
All
where
good.
were we?
So we were talking about so everyone coming and crashing at your house when they were over in Seattle.
Yeah. So, and that's just kind of, I met all the athletes through that. And when Mike Goot, who was the K2 ski team manager, it was time for him to be promoted to marketing manager. They looked all over in the ski world. They didn't really know who to hire because it's such a sensitive position where it's like, it's not about being the best skier when you're a team manager. It's about getting shit done with people. It's making sure everybody has what they need, making sure everybody's where they need to be, making sure everybody understands exactly what the goal is, and then working together to achieve it. And I think they found a lot of guys that were cool dudes who were, sick skiers, but that doesn't always translate into the best office guys, desk jockeys. So I already had a relationship with all the athletes, and when they were asking the athletes who they should bring in, I think my name was suggested a bunch, and I kind of shifted over from the inline side to the ski side, although I continued doing inline stuff. But ski became, the major role in my career from about 2006 on, 2005 or so.
Okay, nice. That's cool. And then were you traveling around a bunch as well with that? Was that like across country and?
Yeah, with inline, it was great. There was so much travel. So I moved out to Seattle with the inline job, and I traveled all summer. So I was gone from April to September. And I just thought Seattle sucked because I never saw the sun there. I was always traveling to like exotic places, and it was amazing. And then I get on the ski side, and I'm traveling a ton as well, but I'm home for the summers. So when I got on the ski side is when I realized that Seattle was awesome. And when I was on the skate side, and that's all I did, I just thought Seattle sucked because it only rained and I missed all summer.
And when you emceeing as well, so was that kind of like the start of, you were like hosting events and emceeing at different action sports events all over the place?
That happened.
So at K2, I think the best event I was ever a part of, there was two. The back nine was one, but the most fun event was called Camp K2. And we brought 350 people to Mount Baker. We rented 72 RVs, had 50 some odd kegs of beer, and we had pretty much a drinking and ski and snowboard Olympics over 3 days. And it was one of those trips that was just amazing. You get there, you got a free pair of skis or a snowboard. It was your choice, all like custom graphic branded Camp K2. You're at Mount Baker in April, and we ended up getting over a foot of snow, and it was bluebird, shit that just doesn't happen in Washington. So it all lined up. But one of my jobs for that event was to MC a flip cup tournament. And it was going to be 16 teams playing in this tournament. And whoever won gets a lot of points in this battle pretty much between the 16 teams. Whichever team accumulated the most points through the weekend would win a trip to Europe for Camp K2 the next year. So I step up to the plate, and I've got my little microphone, and I'm announcing this event, and my team doesn't show up. So I'm like, okay, I will take on everyone here. And I go against the one team, and I drink 4 beers real quick. I beat them. I'm like, I am so much faster than everybody at this whole event. And I'm going crazy, beat the next 4 people. Then I beat the next 4 people. So I've drank like 12 beers really, really fast. I'm on the microphone. I throw up in a toilet, and I get the volume on the microphone. Not a toilet, a trash can, so everybody can hear it. And it's 350 people in this tent. And then I go into the finals. In the finals, I beat 4 more people in drinking. I beat 16 people in drinking, won the contest, was going crazy on the microphone, put the microphone down, and I had like 4 jobs after that. Like, because it was such an industry event. People were like, hey, man, we've got this event in Whistler next week. You're going to be at WSI? I'm like, yeah. They're like, what do you charge? I'm like, I don't know, $500. You know, like I'd never done any events before. And from there, it just started. You know, I probably did 10 to 20 events a year from there until just a couple of years ago when everything slowed down.
Awesome. And were you doing like different, was that all kinds of like different events as well?
Yeah, you know, I did Powder Awards 4 or 5 times, did some stuff for Red Bull, did every K2 event that there was. There's some inline stuff. I mean, I did as much as I possibly could, just, you know, when I had the time.
And would you say that first event, you know, like that was like a standout as one of the most fun ones you've ever done, or?
Well, it had less to do with me being on the microphone than me winning the thing, because in life, you know, you have 10 to 15 moments that you think are your top moments in life. And I don't know about you, because I don't know what you've been through, but when I won that beer drinking contest, and it was 350 people that just exploded in this tent. So it was like, I felt like I had won a game or something, which I guess I did. But I would put that in my top 10 for sure. You know, my bar mitzvah being one of them, my child born being one of them, getting married being one of them. But that would also fit in there.
That's so funny. And then, so you were sort of tying in, like doing the emceeing, doing the events on the side, and then obviously working for K2 as well, and doing their events. Is that right?
Yeah. And you know, it's funny when you say it like that. Life back then did seem like it was all work. And work was fun, so it didn't matter. But like between events, between K2, if you woke up early and you woke up at 7, you went into work early, because everyone who worked at that company at that time, I don't know what it's like now, but you bled K2. It wasn't like you were just ski or snowboard or this or that. You were there for K2 first, and then the other sports mattered. But I mean, it's cool being with like the heritage brand in the category. That's the cool heritage brand. And it's crazy how things are changing right now. And they're, you know, people look at it, they're more corporate. But I mean, you can just look at 50, 60 years of ads and just see how cool that brand was, and how a brand's personality aligned with my personality so much. And just when I think about the company, especially, you know, till at least 2009, they did a lot of hiring of people that fit the K2 mold. It wasn't just looking at resumes. It was like, you had to have that quirky weirdness or you weren't going to get hired.
Yeah, I remember that from like trade shows, like going to ISPO in Germany in like the sort of early 2000s, and how like the parties were there, and then like looking at it like now, like, you know, it's sort of it's definitely changed quite a lot, right?
Yeah, it's not the Wild West like it used to be, for sure.
Yeah. And so then, like, going from that, how did like what happened at K2, and then when did the whole podcasting start for you?
You know, K2 for me, I mean, I worked with all my best friends. My life was my work, which is so crazy. I mean, it's weird to intertwine things that tightly. So when it was time for me to leave K2, it was kind of, when I just felt it was all kind of going downhill. It felt like it wasn't family as much anymore. There's just a little bit different vibe going in. I mean, given I'm still great friends with all of those people, and we were all great friends then, but everything was changing internally. There was a lot of bitching. Every day you could just hear somebody bitching about something else that was going on inside the company. And I did like 12 years where that wasn't the case. And I think when I started bitching a little bit was like when I realized that I need to go, because for me, the things I complained about are money. And I was never going to make any money at K2. And after I had gotten Employee of the Year and I went into my review and my boss looked at me and he was like, man, you're going to get a $1,500 bonus. And I'm like, wait, you're telling me that on paper, I am the best person in this company, because that's what my award said. And I know I'm not the best, but on paper I am. At least I was voted it this year. And I'm going to get $1,500, which if you divide by 52 weeks, isn't much. You know, it's like $38 a week. I'm like, so if that's how much you value me, unfortunately, while I want to stay here, I've got to go and make more money. So I took a job selling partnerships, and I worked for the most awful human in the entire world. And I hope she hears this, and I hope terrible things happen to her, but not that terrible, because I'm not that mean, but am kind of mean. But you know, nothing with her health or anything like that, just like things that make her sad. But either way, I worked there for a year and I did really well. But it was just, you know, I was cold calling people and trying to get money for Oakley's safe house at the Olympics. And I got to go to Rio. That was cool. But like I said, when you work for someone who's miserable, it makes every part of your life miserable. So I realized I needed out of there. And I put the plans together for a podcast while I was working at this marketing firm. And, you know, in May, I started putting the plans together. I quit in August and started a podcast for Powder in September, which was a mistake, but I did it. And then started my podcast the following December or January.
Awesome. And with Powder, was that sort of was that interviewing like athletes and like predominantly skiers?
Yeah, they didn't really have any digital properties going that well. They had Powder Productions, but I don't think you know anything that Powder Productions has done. So they wanted to have a podcast that talked to all the athletes. It just made sense for Powder. So we actually were crushing it. In season 1 of that podcast, we were getting at least, because they didn't show me the numbers after like the first 3 or 4 weeks. There was a lot of things that were told to me that really didn't happen, unfortunately. But I did see the numbers the first 3 or 4 weeks. At one point, we were at about 15,000 listeners a week, which is crazy. You know that. And that was after like a couple months, and they didn't want to do a season 2. And it was just comical to me because I told them, I was like, hey guys, listen, when we were negotiating for our next contract, we had this phone call and we were going to do season 2. I was going to make some money off it. It was going to be great. And final, like it's October, we're about to launch the season. I get on the call with Powder and they're like, hey, Mike, we had a budget cut. And with that budget cut means we are going to focus on print only. We're not going to focus on digital. And I said to them, well, you're going to be looking for a new job pretty soon. And he's like, Mike, you're on speakerphone. There's like 10 people in here. I'm like, they're all going to be looking for new jobs very soon. And you know what they're doing right now? They're looking for new jobs. Exactly. But I'm kidding. Those people have all left, and there's other people in Powder that we're going to get that thing back to normal. But none of those people are there anymore. And unfortunately, digital wasn't as big a function for them, because with any magazine, I feel like you should own the digital space. 10 years ago, Powder should have seen the opportunity and taken it, you know, and invested, but that didn't happen. And, you know, people will learn from that. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this, but Powder was a fixture in my life, and I loved what they do. There's a couple years where I wasn't a big fan of the content, but I felt like that was turning around, and it's a really sad thing. They're not here anymore. I don't know where I was going. I'm just talking shit now.
And with that podcast, I mean, were you like producing it, hosting it? Essentially, like, were you getting your mates on and just talking shit with them, and you know who would be the guests and things like that?
Oh, it was all pro skiers, and I tried to keep it on, you know, the A list of pro skiers that everybody knew, so it was, you know, fitting with Powder's voice. And it went really well. It was easy to do. I handled everything. So Powder wrote one paragraph and uploaded a file, and I did everything else. So like all their intros and anything that said Powder or anything that you heard with the podcast was all done by someone not working for Powder. Was a freelance guy. That was me. So, but they did write the intro paragraph, and it was very well written every time.
All good. and then going from that, so then you started your own like Powell Movement podcast, which is in 2017, right?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, it was the first week of it, and I had actually planned on starting my own podcast the whole time. So when I started with Powder, I would tease my podcast at the end by doing inappropriate questions on Powder, and then you could go to the Powell Movement and hear the inappropriate questions. So
Okay,
I was
that's
always
cool.
driving people to my site. But in thinking about it now, while it was great having a big publication pushing me out, they weren't really pushing me out. They were just like showing people stuff. If they were behind it and actually pushing it, that would have been great for me. But since it was just like another thing that existed on their site that they weren't going to promote, it really did nothing but dilute the interviews that I have now, I feel like.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. And how's it changed a couple of years in? I mean, you're almost on episode 200, right? I mean, how's that gone from like, starting out and those first initial episodes up to now a couple of years later?
It's fun. It's funny to look at it and to see the numbers. Like, you get 1,000 listens in the first couple episodes and you're like, wow, this thing is really working. But now, you get, some episodes will get up to 10,000 listens. And
that's amazing.
It's pretty incredible to me that I can sit in my little room upstairs and I put a shit ton of work into it. I know you put a shit ton of work into it, but it's incredible that many people can hear something that I'm doing from my little room. So I look at it as, building a catalog of the history of these sports and the personalities in them. Yeah. And, I have 200 now, and hopefully I'll have, 600 in a few years, and we'll be able to just have a catalog of who all these people were, and that will exist because that's what Powder was. That's what snowboarder was. They might not have always been that way when they got away from focusing on athletes, but that's what these magazines should have been, was building the heroes. And, now it's going to be up to me, you, Free Skier, Ski Journal, Mountain Gazette to build the heroes and tell the stories.
Yeah, and it's cool hearing everyone's individual stories. I mean, that's the thing that I like the most about it, right? You get a bit more of an insight into the individual and what they're all about.
Yeah, I find it's always great if you can not talk about anything that they've actually done and you're more talking about them as a person. Like I shouldn't even spoil it, but I will. I interviewed Henrik Harlow for my 200th episode. And, psyched to get him on the podcast, but we didn't talk too much about any of the things that he had done in his career. It was just more about like the things that go through his head. And I feel like you really get to know a person that way. And it's like, shit, you don't need to talk about the education of style and break down his video projects. You need to think about what was going through his head the night before, when he's like, is he really just focusing on the grab that much and the look of how, what's he really thinking? Because I think that really tells a lot more than the final product of any project someone's working on.
Yeah. And looking at all these characters, I mean, are there any sort of standouts or kind of stories that you can share about, any favorite moments from the last couple of years?
I feel like my favorite interview, and based on personal reasons, is this kid, Ben Weiss, who is an inline skater. And he was very close with me. And eventually I had to let him go from the K2 team because of some of his activities outside of skating. But he ended up dealing drugs, doing drugs, selling drugs. At one point in Inappropriate Questions, he said he once made someone eat poop, which is just absolutely disgusting for drugs. But that's how bad drug problems get. And I'm fascinated by, I guess, the people's journeys. And sometimes I shouldn't be fascinated by the dark stuff, but it is very interesting to me, especially with people I know. And I don't know why I brought up the poop story, but that was the grossest part of this podcast.
Was that the worst thing you've ever heard then on your show?
I mean, almost in my life. I mean,
it's
if
pretty
you
wrong,
were, like in terms of trying to bet somebody to do something, or, like, hey, I've got this and you can have it if you do this. I look at eating poop as like the worst thing that you can make somebody do, especially their own. And that's what he said someone did.
Oh.
Yeah.
Crazy what these addictions do, huh?
Yeah, man. And I don't listen to any podcast but one, and it's called the Dopey Podcast. And it's all about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. And it's such like a hardcore, and I don't do like hardcore drugs or anything. I just like living vicariously through hearing these stories. But it's such a crazy podcast because there's two hosts for the first 45, 50 episodes who are clean and like trying to stay sober. And then one relapses and dies. And then they have to go into the next show. And he's like, whoa, I got the worst news ever yesterday. Chris is dead. And it's funny that the podcast totally changed after that, and it's not as good. But I don't know. That's in terms of what I listen to podcast wise. That's the only one.
And now, like, what are you working on? And like any sort of projects? I did see during lockdown you were doing this. It was a beer drinking competition, right? Where you're kind of bringing on people and almost going back to the beer pong days, I guess.
Yeah, I'm really fast at drinking one beer. I don't know if you saw the beer that we sipped. I actually slammed mine. It was gone in one sip. But yeah, that was something I did for like 30 weeks. It felt like, or something like that. I was 33 and 2. But that was just for fun. And I started getting fat when I did that. So I was like up to 190 pounds. So I started exercising. Now I'm down to 170. And I'm not drinking beer like that every day because no one wants to be fat.
And I think that was like maybe back in March. It was when we last spoke, when we were when the whole sort of lockdown thing went on, and it was crazy times. But what are you what are you sort of looking to do? Like, are you doing anything with the podcast like next year, or is there anything that you kind of wanted to do with these episodes?
I mean, I wish I had an answer that could make me sound a little bit more creative or have a plan, but no, I've just got interviews lined up through, I think, mid-January right now. Yep. And so I like to get a head start on scheduling so I never have to stress out about that. And I've got that going. I've got sponsors lined up for season 4, which is in January, or maybe it's season 5. I don't even know what it is, what's happening. But I have sponsors lined up, and I'm trying to get 1 or 2 more. And I've got one exciting one that would fill my cannabis bucket, which would be very exciting for me because I've wanted to do that forever. And yeah, that's about it. My plan is to put out an episode every week for the next year or 2. And then maybe I can reevaluate and see if there's something else that I want to do different. But right now, I've got an 11-year-old, so it's nice doing a podcast and being able to spend a shit ton of time with him. And eventually he won't want to hang out with me. And then maybe I can look at other stuff.
And have you been taking him? Have you guys gone skiing together? And
Oh yeah, we go a lot. We go every weekend, and that's kind of our thing. That's like the only real sport that he's into a lot. Mm-hmm. So we are getting very excited for this season. Nice.
And any kind of, obviously with what's going on, I mean, have you got any trips planned? With any sort of locations near you, ski wise?
We're gonna do a lot of the summit at Snoqualmie. We'll probably make Alpental home base this year, but we're also going to hit Crystal a few times, White Pass, which is like the best secret in Washington, and they probably don't want me to even mention that. They probably do, but the people who go there don't. So we'll go there, and we're just going to try to hit a lot of the local small mom and pop resorts. I feel like this year is going to be a big year for the small resort.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think everyone's going to be going local, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. We're over in Portugal. They got a little mountain up there, but I don't think it gets much snow. So I don't know. I'll be trying to go across to Spain, down to Sierra Nevada. There's a place around there which is all right.
Can't you go to Andorra? Isn't that like?
Or we can go to Andorra is like drive wise. It's probably about 11 hours from us.
Oh, okay.
It's about 7 hours to Sierra Nevada to the south of Spain.
Okay.
But then it's a quick flight from Lisbon to to France and Austria and Switzerland and stuff. So yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So if people want to watch the show, or if they want to listen in, what's the best way to follow what you're up to?
I mean, the easiest way is to go through iTunes and just pull up the podcast there. But I have everything on my website, thepowellmovement.com, and I think on every platform you can pretty much find where the podcast is. But I always feel like the easiest is just going to iTunes if you have an iPhone. And if not, there's other ways to do it on Androids. I just don't know what they are.
Cool. Yeah. Good stuff, man. Well, it's been awesome talking to you. Look forward to hearing the next episodes. And we'll be staying tuned.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for making this happen. It's a pleasure and a treat.
Thanks, man.
All right, take care. Peace.